the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization is called to order. Lisa, do we have a quorum? Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Hickman, and I'm the Space Coast TPO Office Specialist. And I'm going to do roll call for attendance so we can see if we have quorum here. And obviously we do. Okay. Mr. Vanny, Mr. Stoll, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Newman, Mr. Carter, Mr. Pettick. Hi. Ms. Mickelson. Ms. Mickelson. Mr. Honeycutt. Mr. Kohler. Here. Mr. Vollmer. Here. Ms. Balzanto. Mr. Fuscus. Here. Mr. Miller. Present. Mr. DeBlau. Here. And online, I'm going to recognize Mr. Sasso and Mr. Lawndale, or Ms. Lawndales. So, Mr. Chairman,
Here.
Thank
Here.
you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we do have quorum.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. We will need a motion from those present to allow the virtual members to participate. We have a motion from Tom, and we have a second from Arlen. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Welcome, virtual participants.
Thank you.
Next up is public comments. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to Citizen Advisory Committee Recognition Awards, and I'll turn it over to Georgiana.
All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I see that we do have some new members here that I am seeing in person, so I just want to say welcome. We very much appreciate you being here. Our Space Coast TPO Governing Board established a board and committee recognition program. And it was just really to recognize members that obtained a perfect attendance in 2020 calendar year. And those members will be recognized with a thank you letter, as well as a certificate. We also have service awards that will be given to members who have served 4 consecutive years and have an 85% or higher attendance record. So the list of service awards is listed on page 4 of your agenda package. And this year we have 5 Citizens Advisory Committee members for perfect attendance in 2020. And those members are Adam Kohler, representing District 1, Bill Vollmer, representing District 2, Philip Weinberg with the City of Palm Bay, David Carter with the City of Titusville, and Arlen DeBlau, representing the North Beaches Coalition. And your individual certificates will be signed by the governing board chair on Wednesday when we meet, and they will be forwarded to you. Before you leave, if you would please see Abby Hemingway, because we would love to get your picture, and we want to celebrate and share this recognition on social media and other forms as we move forward. But again, I just want to say thank you. It is so important, you know, to the public involvement process, because you represent our citizens. So hearing from you, hearing your opinions, your expertise, your perspectives, it's just so critical to the process. And of course, we know you're all very busy, life happens, but your consistency for those members that show up every single meeting, I just want to say thank you. And that's it for me, Mr. Chair. All right. So the executive director's report is on page 6 of your package. I just wanted to recognize that we have a new employee, Jana Taylor. She's sitting right over here at the back of the room, and she is our new finance and contracts manager. She replaced Carol. And so we're just very, very excited to get her, and we look forward to her contributions as we move forward to accomplish the TPO's mission. Also, I reminded the technical group this morning, our Space Coast TPO call for projects. This is where we do an annual call for projects for any new projects for state and federal funding. And those applications are due to the TPO by March 15th. So if you know that your local government is working on a specific project, you may want to touch base with them, but we are in contact with all of our municipalities. In fact, we've had some one-on-one meetings with them, but that is a very important part of what we do as a TPO. It's about funding. It's about bringing in new funding for those important projects here in Brevard County. Also, March is Florida Bicycle Month, and Abby's going to give a little bit more information about some of the activities that we're involved in, but we're coordinating various events, and we encourage our local governments and our partner agencies to participate and promote these events. And we will be sharing a lot of that information on our Facebook page. Also, Transportation Thursdays webinar series. We are kicking off this webinar series with our senior transportation planner, Sarah Crom. We also have some guest speakers. And on April the 15th, we're going to be having a webinar on Brevard's trails, our regional trail system, trail planning, and how trails can really spark economic development. And so that'll be very exciting. The flyer is on page 41 of your agenda package, so feel free to sign up for it and learn more about trails here in Brevard County. That is another aspect, a very important part of transportation planning as well. And then finally, your Mpoac legislative newsletter, we did send that out. We're trying to do a better job. As soon as we get those newsletters, we're going to send them out to you. So we have not received a new one since I think the February 20th newsletter. Wanted to give everyone a heads up. The mid-block crossing bills are back. If you remember, we had a lot of conversation about that last year, and this was sparked due to the tragedy of the child, Sophia Nelson, that was killed in Satellite Beach. But those bills are back, and so we do expect them to be probably modified as it moves through session. So you'll be potentially hearing more about that. I know the Florida Department of Transportation is working very closely with the legislators to also come up with a potential option. They need another tool in their toolbox, quite frankly. And so that is what they're working on. And at the end of the day, if we can get everyone really having these difficult conversations about pedestrian safety, then something good may come out of this tragedy. So stay tuned as we move forward in session. You also have the draft TAC meeting minutes for February 8th, as well as the governing board minutes of February 11th. And on page 7 is a recap of the February 11th TPO governing board action items. And then just a final reminder, those members that cannot be present for a CAC meeting, it is your responsibility to contact the alternate. We want to make sure that we have representation. And if you're not sure who that is or how to get in contact with them, please see Lisa, because she will give you all the information that you need. So just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that. And Mr. Chair, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Georgiana. That brings us to the consent agenda, which will be passed in one motion. We have several changes corrections that need to be made to the CAC meeting minutes. If you'll go to page 45 or page 3 of the minutes, item 2 refers to the TAC motion. It's actually the CAC motion that was passed. And then on page 4, item 6A, it refers again to the TAC. I was appointed as TAC chair. It should be CAC. And then the next line should be Mr. David Miller was elected as vice chair of the CAC. So those corrections need to be made. And item B under this consent agenda is approval of work order 21-04T the North Brevard Wayfinding and Amenities Master Plan Scope of Services. So if no one has any other discussion on those items, I need a motion. Okay, motion by Adam. Do we have a second? Second by Peter. Any discussion? All in favor, say Peter. Pete Pettick.
First, on the legislative, we've come a long way as far as pedestrian and bicycle safety goes, just to get the number of items in front of the legislature. Just a few years ago, there was hardly anything. So we're making tremendous progress. I guess running our mouth and bitching a little bit helps to accomplish that. And then I used to bitch a lot about the constructing trails with no amenities. And so it's nice to see the wayfinding and amenities master plan. It's a good start where they're going to identify and somehow the pocket parks were preordained because there's little circles if you use that trail. And I imagine that's where the pocket parks are going to go. Good spot to put porta-johns, trail signage, and things like that. There's just one wish I have. When they let things out to bid, they're talking about bicycle repair stations. Please don't give that to the lowest bidder, because I haven't found one yet where the air pump works. And I'm just not talking the state of Florida. You know, the air pumps, they look mighty, heavy. You couldn't steal it if you wanted to, but they don't pump air. So that's the lowest bidder's work for you.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Anyone else? Seeing no one, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second from Pete. Any further conversation? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to item 7, our only action item, approval of the TIP amendment. Georgiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Florida Department of Transportation has requested an amendment to our currently adopted fiscal year 21 through 25 TIP to align with the department's DOT work program. The DOT letter requesting the amendment is on page 66. On page 64 is a copy of the resolution, and it does list all of the different projects that we are amending into the TIP. The first one is the NASA Causeway Bridge. If you remember, the DOT talked about that and presented it in the DOT's work program last month, but this is adding the funding into our TIP, $128 million just for the bridge alone. The Florida Coast to Coast Parish Park Trailhead, that is a federal lands grant, but there's also additional money that's being added for the construction, $2.9 million in Titusville, as well as the CEI phase of over $200,000. And then we have 3 transit projects. They're capital projects, and they're for preventative maintenance funds for vehicles that provide much needed transportation services throughout Brevard County. And those 3 projects are also listed as well. They're very small amounts of money, but it is preventative maintenance type funding. And if the committee approves, we would request approval of resolution 21-15 amending our transportation improvement program.
Okay, thank you, Georgiana. Are there any questions for Georgiana? Greg.
Yeah, looking at these, I understand the last few that are.
Again, let me just interject something. As you know, so we're spaced out pretty well, and we only have so many microphones. So if you would pass the microphone around and speak into the microphone.
Yeah, looking at the last few items, it looks like those are grants. So it's fairly obvious where that money's coming from. It's being given to us. But on the first couple, where is this money coming from to pay for these?
So the NASA Causeway Bridge, Space Florida applied for a US DOT infrastructure grant. And the NASA Causeway, if you remember, had been on our priority list for quite a few years. There was no money to replace the bridge, an aging, I think 1964. And this was critical for the future of space freight. And so this was a very important project, and that infrastructure grant very much saved the day. So that's federal funding. And then the Florida Coast to Coast Parish Park Trailhead, Brevard County applied for a federal lands grant project. And it was for $2 million for the construction phase. And that is different funding than the USDOT. There's different pots of federal money, but it was a little short. And so the TPO governing board, if the governing board approves it on Wednesday, we will be adding some federal money to help supplement that. And that's FHWA federal money. So basically to make the project whole. So both of those projects is federal funds from two different types of federal pots, you might say.
Except for the trailhead where we're throwing in a little bit to supplement the differential.
Correct.
And is anything else falling off of the priority list to make that happen?
No, it is not. And I will say, if you look at the year, all of these projects are in current year, fiscal year 21.
Yeah.
And so that is why you amend the tip. We're amending these projects in current year. This is additional money that we had in current year coming off of projects where maybe bids came in a little low. Because we do a really good job of spending our federal money, sometimes we get additional money. So that's where this money is coming from. And it is very hard to put money in current year on a brand new project. You know, that's very hard from a federal perspective. You got LAP agreements and what have you. So it's just kind of flowing into it. We had the money and we made the project whole.
And you've got 4 line items under that. Does one of them represent the SC TPO money? Or do we know what portion of that 2.9 mil would be?
The coast to coast trailhead?
Yes.
There is, if you look on page, we will point it out here. If you look on page 67 of your package, it lists each one of the fund codes for the Parish Park Trailhead. So the 2 million is the federal lands grant. And if you see the SU fund code, 882,000, that is the TPO's funding that came out of our box. So it's a total of 2.9 million for the construction of the trailhead. Oh, I'm sorry, page 66. My eyes are playing tricks on me.
There's another one on page 67 for SU money, and I was just trying to.
Yes, I'm sorry, and that is the CEI phase. You are correct. That's for CEI.
So the total amount would be the 882
plus the 2. Correct.
So right, just over $1 million.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And any other questions on the TIP amendment? Seeing none, I need a motion, please. Motion from David and second from Greg. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to our presentations. First up is the Minton Road feasibility study. And Travis?
All right. Make sure y'all hear me. No. Yeah. All right. Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm Travis Hills. I'm with Kittleson and Associates, and I'm here to present the results of the Minton Road feasibility study. So a little bit on our agenda. So I'll talk through where this project actually took place, the goals of the project, give a little bit of a recap of what we've done. We'll talk through where this project sits kind of in our overall project development life cycle. And then we'll talk through the preferred roadway plan. So what was the results of our study and the cost estimate for that. And then we'll talk through next steps. So we looked at Minton Road. It's a 4-lane section from Palm Bay Road up to US 192. It's in the city of West Melbourne. Brevard County is the maintaining jurisdiction of the roadway. Looked at that corridor. As you'll see, we have a couple signals as well, a few signals along the corridor that we looked at as part of the corridor study. I'll talk about the intersection improvements that we did at those here in a few slides. And the overall goals of the study. So the first one right off the bat was to assess the need and feasibility of widening from 4 to 6 lanes. So for anyone that's driven this section of roadway, like I said, it's 4 lanes. There's a lot of right-of-way out there today. They had the foresight to get that right-of-way for a potential 6-lane widening in the future. We looked at traffic operations. We looked at future volumes. We're kind of really on that threshold out in the future year of that 4 to 6 lanes. So if we did go spend tens of millions of dollars in widening the road, we would probably have a pretty overcapacity facility. So the decision was made to not explore widening as a part of this study. So traffic was part of that. There was also visioning efforts that had been done. So the city had a couple areas that had maybe potential kind of town center areas. We didn't really think that a 6-lane corridor would fit that kind of pedestrian, multimodal, bicycle kind of corridor vision, town center vision feel. So there were a couple different reasons, but that is why we didn't explore widening to 6 lanes along the corridor. Instead, we focused on intersection improvements, so we really hit those pretty hard, and we really wanted to address the existing and future congestion and safety issues that we were seeing along the corridor, in addition to incorporating and enhancing our multimodal facilities for our pedestrians, our bicyclists, and our transit. So how did we get to this point? So a few different steps in the process, kind of simplifying it down. Existing conditions and future no build. That's kind of our first cut. We come in, we see what's going on today, identify our issues and opportunities along the corridor. That helps lead us to our roadway and intersection alternatives analysis. So in the spring and summer of 2020, we developed and presented 4 different what we call roadway typical sections to the general public at our August 2020 public meeting. And then we had numerous intersection alternatives that we presented, and we got pretty good feedback, got a lot of comments, and then had some public voting on some of the different alternatives at the intersections and along the corridor as well. That led us to our preferred roadway plan development. Last step in the process, that was fall, winter of this past year. We selected our preferred roadway alternative and had our public meeting last month on that. So kind of taking a little bit of a step back. So where are we at in the development of a project? So as you'll see by this little red box, we are at the very beginning stages. So we're in those planning stages, kind of the end of the beginning stage, I would say. We have a few different stages to go, so we don't think we're going to need PD&E for the recommended improvements that we're presenting today, but there will be design, potentially right away, and some construction that is going to take place, and we're going to need funding for all of those phases. So before we jump into what the recommended alternative is, I wanted to give a snapshot of what's out there today. So like I said, it's a 4-lane road. We have 12-foot lanes today, a 4-foot paved shoulder to the outside. And then we have that kind of swale grass area out to the outside of the travel lanes. And then we have about a 5-foot wide sidewalk that's really at the right-of-way line. So for our preferred roadway alternative, we went with a shared use paths alternative. So this was 34% of the vote from our August public meeting. This was the highest percentage that got voted for. The next highest was like in the low 20s. What this really does is focus on the multimodal pedestrian bicycle atmosphere and environment. So we're taking those 5-foot sidewalks that are out there today, widening them out to be 12 feet wide. We still maintain that swale. We're hoping to do some landscaping in that swale to enhance the environment as well. And then we're looking at reducing the travel lanes down to 11 feet, putting in a curb and gutter to the outside. So really trying to help with the speed management aspect. So for anybody who's driven it, especially during non-peak hours when there's not much congestion, you can go 50, 55, 60 pretty easily. We're hoping to try to get those speeds back down closer to the posted speed limit of 45 miles an hour. So I'm not going to go through each intersection. If you have any specific questions, you can let me know at the end. But just as a highlight, as a summary, we looked at turn lane improvements at Heald Road, Norfolk, Carriage Gate Drive, Eber Boulevard, Milwaukee and Heritage Oaks Boulevard, and Henry. What we're seeing is that 4 of those 6 intersections were operating at level service E or F during at least one of our peak hours. So like with school, A is great, F is bad. So we don't want to be in the S, we want to be in kind of the A, B, C range. So we're seeing that if we don't do anything, we're hurting out there. We got some pretty big issues. With the improvements that we went through and did as part of the study, we only had 1 intersection operating at level service E in one of those peak hours, but intersection was operating at level service F. We're seeing a pretty significant delay benefit, even though it's still level service E. Overall, we're seeing travel time reductions between 9 and 28%. So if we went along the corridor, drove from Palm Bay Road to US 192, we would see about a 30% reduction in one of those peak hours in the direction of travel. So to show just a sample of what we look at, I'm not going to hone in specifically on the details, but this is just Milwaukee and Heritage Oaks. We go through a pretty rigorous process of looking at different concepts for these different alternatives that we're looking at and that we present to the public. So this was the preferred alternative. We looked to add some turn lanes along the side streets. Minton Road is the what looks like it's east-west, but north is to the right. And we go through, we develop this concept. We look at potential right-of-way impacts, which fortunately at this intersection we don't have any. But all the orange is some of the new pavement. You'll see the pink is the new shared use path and kind of how that ties into the intersection. So looking at how things interact to enhance and improve each specific intersection location. So the big slide, everybody wants to know, well, how much is all this going to cost? So we're looking at about 13.5, just under $13.6 million. This includes all of the roadway intersection improvements. So this is all the turn lane improvements at the intersections I've discussed. And then also the shared use path, kind of restructuring of the roadway typical section, adding the curb and gutter, restructuring the swale as well. So with that being said, next steps. So the draft report is currently in the TPO's hands. They're reviewing that. We're hoping to get that published over the next 60 days. And then like I mentioned before, we do need design right-of-way and construction funding. So really we have no funding for those next steps right now, but we're hoping that the city of West Melbourne and Brevard County can get together, hopefully come to some type of funding agreement, and we can get some funds funded for this project moving forward. So with that, Sarah wasn't able to be with us today, but she was the project manager. I was the project manager on the Kittleson side. I'm gonna be out for any questions.
Okay, any questions for Travis?
Yep.
David.
What happens to those beautiful wide sidewalks when you hit the bridge going over 95?
So we didn't look at the bridge. The bridge has, it's like 5 foot wide with the barrier that's in there right now. And so what'll end up happening is they'll narrow down to go up and over the bridge. But the bridge, we didn't look at anything structurally with the bridge. It wasn't really included as part of our study. So we didn't look at that specifically, but I think that, yeah, that's gonna be the one pinch point.
Most of the pedestrian needs are north of the bridge. Anyway, It's kind of like a natural barrier.
Right.
And I'd also like to add, while I've got this, I agree with West Melbourne that to maintain those lanes at 12 and not 11. You want that?
Okay.
Adam
Senator
Kohler, District 1.
Adam, go ahead.
A couple of things on your cost estimates. What year were you using for those numbers? 2020?
It was 2020. Yep, 2020 unit
This project
prices.
is supposed to be like 10, 15 years out.
Mhm.
Why do we use current year when we know that it's going to take 10 to 15 years for the project?
Well, we do add contingency on top of all this. So this has a 20% contingency on top of other factors that we add into it. So
Just asking the question, thanks.
no, I understand. Yeah, and that helps with a little bit of the buffer, but really these are planning level cost estimates. So we're just trying to get a rough, within a couple $100,000 of, okay, are we talking a $50 million project or are we talking a $10 million project? Once this goes into design, that's where they're going to get in and do that really refined cost estimate. I can't speak as to design if they do cost estimates for, whatever year it's going to be built, because I know that sometimes it could be 5 years between, design and construction. I can't speak to that, but that's what we're doing as part of our study. So.
One other question, please.
Adam.
What impact does this West Melbourne request have on the feasibility study you just completed? Is it going to delay a final report? Or do
No.
you make small modifications to accommodate this request if we go along with it?
So I can take a stab and then you may want to jump in. So yeah, we presented this last week. City of West Melbourne Council did make the, I don't know what that's called, a proclamation or a
Request.
request that it be the lane stay at 12 feet wide. What our job is to recommend the safest, what we deem to be the safest alternative for the corridor. So in my professional opinion, 11-foot wide lanes would be the safer alternative. It would help manage speeds. It's been shown as a part of research studies that it does do that. So from the purposes of our study, we are going to recommend and move forward with 11-foot lanes with the caveat that we're going to be adding this letter to the end of our report and noting that during design, if, you know, whoever is funding the design, whether it's City of West Melbourne, Brevard County, combination of both, those decisions can be modified. So nothing that we are doing here is set in stone 100%. It has to be done this way. So if you know, the designer comes back, city, county, and they agree we want 12-foot lanes, all that does is bump our curb and gutter out 2 feet, and it shouldn't affect the feasibility of what we've done here. It shouldn't change any of those recommendations.
Yeah, we are not ignoring the city's request.
I just wanted to know the
Sure.
impact if we said, you know, this is a reasonable request. And I just wanted to know the impact.
Sure, and
Thank
it's a Brevard County roadway. Brevard County supported the 11-foot lanes, as you know, many roadways all over state and county. It's 11-foot lanes, which really does kind of help with the traffic calming. But at the same time, this is going right through the city of West Melbourne, and we respect their wishes. This is just a high-level concept. We are a regional transportation planning agency that have to consider all modes. I mean, that's what we are required to do. And so we will make our recommendation, but ultimately when it goes forward to design, it's not set in stone. You know, we're not going to mandate anything that it be 11-foot lanes. So it really will be between Brevard County and the city of West Melbourne.
Peter?
Between the 12 and the 11, what is the cost differential?
I do not know. We didn't look at 12-foot lanes as a part of our study.
And why is it safer to do 11 feet than 12 feet?
Well, the research shows that it's safer for 11-foot lanes versus the 12-foot lanes.
Why?
That is what the research shows.
Peter, I think engineers have a preference for 11-foot lanes because theoretically it reduces the speed on that roadway in those lanes.
Yeah, I mean, 11-foot lanes has been the standard for roadway design for probably at least the last 5 years, if not before that. All state roadways that are being designed with a posted speed of 45 miles an hour or less are going to be designed at 11-foot lanes. Malabar Road, west of I-90, or the portion from St. John's Heritage Parkway to Minton that was presented late last year, we're looking at 11-foot lanes as part of that study. The Babcock Street PD&E, 11-foot lanes in the 45-mile-an-hour section as well. So to be completely honest, I was a little shocked when this became an issue because this, you know, the 11-foot versus 12-foot hasn't been an issue for my entire career. It's just, it is what it is. And that's the design guidance, Florida Green Book, Florida Design Manual. A lot of the research points to the fact that, you know, 11-foot lanes a little bit safer. Really, there's not an increase in crashes with 11-foot lanes. So that's the guidance that we go off of. So.
Sandra?
Unfortunately, I didn't attend the meeting last week with the council, but I did at the business advisory. And the gas station southern left turn is going to be eliminated. And so it came up at that meeting as to how it could be negotiated another way. Mr. Morgan suggested, you know, going through the traffic light and then coming around that way. Also, the other option that I suggested in the audience was to take a right-hand turn onto Minton and then do a U-turn at Sunset.
Yep.
And establish that. So would that be under consideration?
I mean, that's actually what we were thinking as a part of that. So
Okay.
the full median opening at Sunset, you can make those movements. I think there's a northbound left there. So there's already a turn lane, I believe, that you can go into that lane and then turn.
There's room in the island.
Right.
Later on, because we were going to cross that at Henry coming from the council chamber. They eliminated that left-hand turn lane. So we have to go down to the light at Meadow Lane and Henry.
Right. Yeah. So when we looked at the access management approach for that specific movement, and I think we presented that in our August public meeting, where we had different routes that folks could take that essentially now keeping in mind that you technically aren't allowed to make that movement today. So if you make that left out from the gas station across Eber, you're technically doing it illegally, but just further kind of enforcing that, making it a little bit safer. We looked at all those different U-turns, and yeah, that was one of the ones that
they were just considering the residents stopped, got gas, and then wanted to go home.
Right.
So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Greg. Microphone, please, Greg.
Yes, the swale, is that for stormwater management, or is there actually a stormwater system that you'll be tying into?
Yeah, so there's existing stormwater conveyance out there today. So there's ditch bottom inlets in the swale that go down to trunk lines on both sides of the road. And so what we're hoping, and that's why this cost isn't higher, is because when we go put that curb and gutter in, we're actually going to provide kind of open flume areas that go directly into the swale. And then all we're having to do is really just relocate some of where those boxes are, where those ditch bottom inlets are. But really we're tying everything back to the existing system that's out there today, because we didn't want this to turn into a drainage project at the end of the day.
Okay. And then looking at the city of West Melbourne's request for basically an additional 4 foot of laneage, would that come, do you know if you'd split that up between the swale, the median, or the shared use path?
I will defer to design on where they want to get that 4 feet from. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Pete.
First, the pedestrian and bicycle safety. I absolutely love your alternative. Where did that come from? Who came up with that? That's almost perfect.
I won't take full credit. It was a collective team effort, I would say, technical committee.
Yeah, because that is really, really nice, especially the separation between the traffic. And then you have the 12-foot shared use. The only people that might not like it is the spandex crowd, but they could kiss my butt if they don't like it. And then the 11-foot lanes. When right away got more and more expensive and widening projects started happening and the lanes started getting narrower to 11 feet, I made up my mind that if I'm going to speed, I'm going to learn how to speed on 11-foot lanes, because that's the trend of the future. So I don't have any issue with that at all. That's just what's happening. And we might as well learn to drive on 11-foot lanes because they're not getting any wider. And then the third item I have, and I never like to see this, but you have it right here, adding exclusive eastbound right turn lane to be designed and constructed by others. If you're going to put something like that in there, why don't you just put kiss our butt? We're not doing it. So you know, when you say designed in the future and constructed by others, you're just telling the folks, hey, it ain't happening by us, you know?
Yeah, so there's some, there were some discussions about that. So we do have a concept for adding that turn lane. We have 3 different concepts. So one is a widening to the south. So we're talking about Milwaukee. I don't know what slide number this is because I think mine's off, but I'll go back a few just so that everybody's on the same page. So we're talking about the Milwaukee Avenue leg of this intersection specifically. So we have 3 different concepts. We're looking to add a eastbound right turn lane. One would go to the south, one would be a center widening, so you do a little bit of pavement on each side, and then one to the north. The one to the south, you have a bunch of utility poles that are probably less than 10 feet off the sidewalk. So you're going to have some pretty significant utility costs if you go in, try to move those utilities to add that lane. Going to the north, you have drainage that is for the parcels that are on that northwest portion of the intersection. So not sure if we're going to need to get into some type of ponding situation to offset those drainage impacts. And then if you widen to the center, you're going to be doing a little bit of both. So we have that in the report. We have those concepts generated. And through our discussions with the technical committee, it was decided that future development, we wanted to leave it open for future development to potentially fund that improvement. So we didn't want, as a part of this study, to determine an alternative to say this is what you should do. And we wanted to leave it a little bit more open-ended so that the city has wiggle room to negotiate that approach with any potential future development.
They doing impact fees now? I just threw that out there to be a smart butt. You know, because that money always becomes the issue, like how do we fund it? Well, if we have impact fees, then the money is there for just those type of improvements. If it's not, then you're looking at gas tax, and right now that's in short supply. So I just was having fun with you on that one. And the future, you know, by others, for some reason that never happens. And that's pretty much it. I really like that multi-use. I was really impressed because that's the best I've seen to date. And, you know, as long as we keep thinking in that direction, good things are going to happen for the pedestrians and the bicyclists, and get out the car and use your calories instead of gas, right?
I appreciate it. Thank you, Pete.
Hey, well, thanks. You know, thanks for the design. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Yeah, Bill?
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, thank you. I was gonna just jump in and agree with Pete, but I think I'll agree with almost everything except the kiss my butt part. Sorry, Pete. But I do agree that shared use pathway, the design, the look of it, it's gonna really enhance safety. We're getting more bicyclists, pedestrians, and I think this is gonna really invite even more. And it really does look good. So my compliments.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Yeah, Travis, I have one concern. You have one intersection which, after these proposed improvements, goes from a level of service F to a level of service E during peak hours. By the time this project is done, is actually put into effect, there's a good chance that intersection will go from a level of service F to stay at a level of service F, rather than this being a long-term solution for that intersection.
So when we look at any project, we're looking out to 2045 for all of our traffic volume. So all of the width improvement numbers are all based on 2045 traffic volume. So hopefully if this gets built, and actually the approach that it is the eastbound approach at Norfolk, which is currently under design by the city of West Melbourne now to add a second left turn lane. So that actually of any improvements coming out of that, that's probably one that's going to come out first, be one of the first ones out. So we expect that to be, level service E out to 2045. So we should, based on our models, be good.
Okay. Any other questions for Travis? All right, thank you.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
I do have a comment, and this is in regards to utility relocation. If utilities are in the right of way, they're moved at no cost to the project, because the utility companies, they use the right of way for free. They don't have to buy land. So when it comes to moving the utilities, the expense is on them. As a matter of fact, there's even a state statute that says if the utility company does not move the utility in a timely fashion, then the local jurisdiction can move the utility and back charge the company for the moving. So utilities should never be an issue if they're in the right of way. If they're not in the right of way and you want to move, then they are a big issue.
Okay, moving on to our next presentation, the St. John's Heritage Parkway Babcock to Malabar Alternative Corridor Study Update. Jordana?
Yep, I think Jesse Bluen is on the line. Jesse, are you
Oh,
there?
okay.
Yep, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yes,
I
sir.
think,
Yeah, Jesse, you should have control of the screen now.
okay, let me just see if I do. Okay, it's just got a little bit of delay. Okay, well, thank you, Chair and members of the board. It's great to be here this afternoon, or great to be presenting to you this afternoon. My name is Jesse Bluen. I'm a project manager with Inwood Consulting Engineers. I'm the project manager for the St. John's Heritage Parkway Alternative Corridor Evaluation. This is a local agency program, or LAP project, being administered by Brevard County with oversight from the Florida Department of Transportation. So if I could shift your attention to the left-hand side of your screen, at the top, you can see the first of two existing segments of the St. John's Heritage Parkway. The first goes from Malabar Road north to the I-95 Ellis Road interchange. Then I'll take you to the bottom of the screen, and you can see starting at Babcock Street out to the I-95 St. John's Heritage Parkway interchange is the second existing segment. So let's shift to the right-hand side of your screen. And as you can see, the terminus at Malabar Road and Babcock Street really defined our study area. So the first part of the study involved extensive resource mapping of the natural, social, cultural, and physical environments, and working with landowners to come up with the corridors that we'll show you here in just a minute. But there's been a lot of effort put into evaluating the baseline conditions of the study area in order to come up with what we call windows of opportunity to connect the dots, so to speak. So what is an alternative corridor evaluation process? It's a corridor planning study. It's a process that the DOT came up with, and it's essentially to evaluate new corridors, or what are often called greenfield corridors. A big part of this is establishing the project's purpose and need, and in this case, the first one being systems linkage. Systems linkage just means we're looking to connect points A and B and fill in the disjointed section of the St. John's Heritage Parkway. Certainly, economic development plays a key role in a transportation project, and we looked at the traffic out to 2045, and approximately 9,200 cars would use this segment of the parkway on a daily basis. So we propose improvements to address the project need, meaning we develop our corridors. We identify the impacts of those corridors. We also evaluate engineering feasibility. Even though we're at a high level planning stage, we want to make sure that what we're developing can be carried forward and is technically sound. There's a lot of public involvement and agency coordination, part of why I'm here today. We do anticipate a completion date of, at this point, probably mid-2022. And it's important to note that the next phase, project development, the PD&E study phase, is not currently funded. So a little bit more about the ACE process. What you're seeing here is items you'd normally see conducted in a PD&E study or in a final design phase. Our charge is more of a geographic information systems desktop analysis, and really our charge is to develop up to 2 to 3 corridors that can be carried forward, again, into the PD&E study process. So normally, you see these list of items and you think this is what we're going to do as part of this study, but we're doing more of a higher level, planning level analysis in order to identify viable corridors. That's really what our charge is. One of the big things as a subset that we did as part of this project is, because ultimately the parkway is envisioned to go from I-95 St. John's Heritage Parkway interchange up to I-95 at Ellis Road, is a look at the land use and how it affects the St. John's Heritage Parkway and how the St. John's Heritage Parkway affects land use. So we built upon some great work the TPO did as part of their 2040 long-range transportation plan and looked at various development scenarios throughout the region to see how that would affect transportation. We do have a meeting with our subgroup actually next week to present the results of that analysis. Again, public involvement, agency coordination has been a big part of what we've been doing. Early on in the study, we formed a working group that's comprised of property owners, homeowners associations, non-governmental agencies such as the Audubon Society and the Sierra Club. We've also had a lot of meetings with local, state, regional, and federal agencies because as part of this process, they're going to be evaluating the corridors with us in tandem. And at this point, I'll go ahead and review the corridors that we have. We have 5 initial corridors. Each corridor at this point is 300 feet in width. And we do that, we take a more conservative approach at the planning level phase in order to give us some leeway as we advance if we need to shift an alignment or avoid a fatal flaw such as a cara nest, something along those lines, that we have the quote wiggle room to do that. So I'm going to have to go a little bit quick through the corridors. The first corridor, Corridor A, begins at Babcock Street. It utilizes a right-of-way donation from Waterstone, turns south into Rolling Meadows, and then we thread the needle between Rolling Meadows and Willowbrook Farms as we take a northerly turn. We then head west just south of the existing canal, cross the existing canal, and then connect with Wingham Drive, which is a city-owned road. You're seeing what's called the compound here in this area. And the compound is essentially a platted area that goes back to the General Development Corporation days. And there's a lot of platted land, but not much else. So it's a kind of a good time to provide an opportunity to link land use and transportation. There's a city-owned parcel just to the west of the Bombardier facility, shown in pink. Unfortunately, we do have impacts to Three Forks Conservation Area. There's nothing that we can do to avoid that. We will start coordination during the ACE process, and that will continue through future phases. And then we end up at Malabar Road to the top, as you can see, the end limit. One thing I wanted to point out on these corridors is that anything north of the Bombardier facility is constant, so I won't spend a lot of time on the northern portion of the corridor. Corridor B, again, starts at Babcock Street, utilizes that right-of-way donation from Waterstone. Instead of going south, however, this time we go north and thread the needle between Rolling Meadows and Waterstone. This was something that property owners asked us to look at, so we included it in our corridors to be evaluated. We then take a long tangent section just south of the canal, and then we utilize, again, Wingham Drive north through Bombardier, and then again, everything else remains constant. Looking at Corridor C, again, we utilize that southerly alignment through Waterstone, come down here, through Rolling Meadows. This time we're a little bit further into Willowbrook Farms, and then we come up on a little bit different geometry that provides a little bit more room for growth and development on the east side, the west side of the corridor. And as you can see here, Corridor D most resembles Corridor A. Again, we take the turn down into Rolling Meadows and the turn between Willowbrook Farms and Rolling Meadows. And then again, really the difference here is just the geometry as we connect to Wingham. You have a little bit more room for development on that west side. And for some geometric reasons, we needed to configure the corridor as such. Finally, Corridor E most resembles Corridor B, where we again go through the southern portion of Waterstone along the right-of-way that has been dedicated, take a turn to the north, follow a rather long tangent section, cross the canal, and then eventually connect to Wingham Drive. So our next steps, we're going to have ongoing coordination with local governments and stakeholders. You'll certainly be seeing us again in the next probably few months. We're going to start what's called the efficient transportation decision-making process, and that's a process that the FDOT follows, where essentially we do our GIS analysis, our evaluations in a tool with the local, federal, and state agencies in order to come up with our corridors. We do anticipate holding a public meeting. It seems to be probably late spring at this point, around May or so, late May, I should say. Again, our charge is to identify up to two to three viable corridors that can be carried forward through the PD&E study process, which again, wanted to highlight that is not funded. And another facet is that the no-build option remains a viable option throughout the study process. And in closing, Jeanette Scott with Brevard County is the project administrator. Her contact information is listed here. So if you have any comments or questions after the meeting, we'd certainly be happy to answer them for you. And I'm certainly here to answer any questions you may have today.
Anyone have any questions for Jesse? Pete?
That area, it's been a while since I've been there, but I remember it's pretty wet. A lot of lowlands, a lot of marsh, a lot of swamp. Is there, out of those 5 that you picked, is there any that are drier than the other? And if not,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were finished with your question.
well, it is. Are there any areas drier? And then I have a second part.
Sure. We're just starting the evaluation phase. So we're going to be answering that question here in the coming months as to what the wetland and floodplain impacts would be for each corridor. So that's the first part of your question there.
Well, the reason I brought that up is that's where expense comes in, because you have to compensate. And
100%. Yeah.
Right. And would the developers of those properties be doing the compensating, or would they want me, the taxpayer, to foot the bill?
That's something that we're not there yet. This has no funding beyond the planning stage, so I couldn't really answer that question. The St. John's Heritage Parkway has been planned for over 20 years at this point, and the existing segments are public facilities. If that changes, I think it'll be in the future and definitely beyond my call.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, man.
David?
Yes, I'm very familiar with this area. Can you point to the rectangle that you call the compound area?
Absolutely. Here, I'm on corridor C.
So let me give you a brief history of this. Palm Bay, at least this part of the map, was originally going to be another GDC development called Port Malabar. So that rectangle represents Port Malabar units 51, 52, 53. Unfortunately, they were platted. They were designed in the 50s, but they weren't platted until after the state law changed with respect to septic systems on a 10,000 square foot lot. Therefore, generally speaking, residential building in that rectangle in PMU 51, 52, 53 has been prohibited. That is why it has stayed such a barren landscape. We used to call it the moratorium area because there was a moratorium against putting septic systems in a 10,000 square foot lot.
Yeah, thank you.
To the west of the line that you see for the road is wetter. It's lower, but it's dry where you see the alignment. The only thing I see is to please remember that this is still, they're all individual owners of these lots, the little 10,000 square foot lots, and there's commercial and industrial and educational use parcels within there. So if you look at the first two, you see how it curved around. Well, that's because that's the way the road goes. And right at that curve are commercial, 15-acre commercial lots. The other three, they cut through those. So whether you like it or not, it will be a little more expensive to get that land with those last three options. But I just wanted everybody on CAC to understand that although this area has not been developed, it does represent thousands of individual landowners. It is just because there are no houses there, it's because you can't put the infrastructure in if you can't build on them. And that's why it's been stuck that way for so many years. I just wanted to make that clarification.
And there are no
Thank you.
utilities out there as well.
Exactly.
That's
Okay,
right.
Any
No,
other questions?
I appreciate that information, and we're working closely with the city of Palm Bay to kind of vision what this land could be in the future, and what could happen maybe by the time this roadway is built. But certainly thank you for that background. That's a few of those items I definitely were not known, so thank you very much for your time and expressing that.
Mr. Chair, if
Sure,
I
Janet.
may just say a couple things. This ACER study is really, it's an important first step for this project to potentially come to fruition one day. We really do need to identify a corridor and preserve the right of way. And the city will also review, potential developer projects that may possibly make this project be able to come to fruition in sections. But just for a reality check, even though the TPO paid for the study, and again, this is you don't know what you don't know. This was important to go through this process, and clearly there's a lot more work to do. But we do not have this project as cost feasible in the TPO's long-range transportation plan. In other words, the anticipated revenue that when we build our long-range plan over the next 25 years, the funding is not there to program the PD&E phase or the design phase or the right-of-way or the construction. So, if it was easy, it would have already been done. We're going to have to definitely, the city is going to have to really kind of work with the developers and see how we can move forward to actually build this project. But as Jesse said, the St. John's Heritage Parkway, we've been, this project's been going on for 25, 30 years. So really good work. And this is an important step, but funding is going to be a challenge.
Thank you, Georgiana. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, just another thing I just want to add is there's a long list of what this ACE does not address in detail. Of course, the biggest thing, and there's obvious reasons for it, is potential cost, which Georgiana just touched on. And to get this on our cost feasible list, I don't know when it will ever be cost feasible, frankly, because this is going to be an incredibly expensive project if it ever gets done. Right,
and it's more, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could just interject on your comment. We'll be doing higher level planning costs, kind of like what Travis mentioned during his last presentation. What we'll end up doing is per mile unit costs. So you will have an idea of what, at the end of the day, what we'll walk away with. It's just, there will be contingencies, as one of the gentlemen said prior to, wetlands will definitely be impacted, so we won't have wetland compensation numbers, but we're definitely going to do the best we can to get you the most accurate planning level cost estimates for the corridors, because their corridors are pretty much the same. The cost estimate shouldn't really vary per corridor, especially when we're looking at a per mile unit cost. You can just kind of extrapolate out and come up with a good good high level number. I also wanted to just give Jeanette Scott at the county, who is the county the project administrator, an opportunity to say a few words if she wanted to.
Thank you, Jesse. First of all, I just want to thank Jesse, the consultant, for an exemplary presentation. And we, at the county, we want to thank the members of our working group, as well as the City of Palm Bay and the TPO for their ongoing support of the study so far and our tasks that are ahead of us. We hope to finish the study spring of next year and have that high level matrix of some anticipated projected costs for future phases. But as Georgiana had indicated, and the county really wants to reiterate, beyond the ACER report, future phases are unfunded: PD&E, design, right-of-way, and construction. But yet, system linkage planning for the Parkway is an important task. And I just want to thank everyone for their time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Scott. Thank you, Jesse.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, moving on to reports.
I have one more item, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Pete, go ahead.
And this is when you're doing corridor analysis. I've never seen borings come along with it. And when you get into swampy areas and without a boring, you don't know how much subsoil excavation you have to do. That's muck below sand. And it could really, really eat your lunch if you get into a project and you don't know how much crap you got to take out because you got to bring good material in. And I just was wondering if there are any borings planned in your corridor analysis, any time in the thinking phase of which corridor would be best, because borings are cheap, a lot cheaper than.
Borings would come during the next phase when it advances to PD&E. What they would do is generally come up with a plan, a boring plan, depending on, hopefully it's not too boring, but a plan for borings that would be evaluated in maybe a certain area where there is muckier soils and that sort of thing. But we won't be doing borings at this level. What we will be doing is building contingencies into the cost estimates to account for things like muck removal. And, we try to get as closest to the pin as possible at this stage, but we usually kind of err on the side of higher estimates, higher contingencies.
Well, without digging a hole, you don't know how much muck is there. Now, are your borings going to come after you settle on a corridor or before?
After. They would come in the next phase.
So you might be bypassing a lot more economical corridor in lieu of whatever other parameters you're using and get into something that's going to be a lot more expensive because you really don't know what's underground. And that was my whole point. And when you got 5 corridors to look at, maybe you do a boring every half a mile just to get a general idea of what you're up against and how much potentially it could cost, because the real expense comes during construction, not during picking out a corridor. And if you got 5 areas, if it was my property, I'd want to know how much it's going to cost me to do each one of these. And, as being a taxpayer, that'd be nice to know up front. And usually we don't have that kind of intelligence. We do like we're doing now. Just dive in and, oh, I didn't know all this slop was down there. How the hell did that happen? But, you can avoid that with very, very little expense because borings are so cheap and they tell you so much.
Yeah, David, definitely appreciate the suggestion.
Pete, the City of Palm Bay spent quite a bit of money a few years ago in anticipation of trying to find some way to get utilities to that area. And that included site elevation and some borings that were done back then. This is not anything new. They've been working on this poor old right-of-way, it seems like since I was born, but a lot of work has been done on that, and it's not as wet up near the corridor as it is to the west and the south. Those are the wettest parts.
Well, sometimes it could be dry, but you don't know what's down below.
Well, all I'm saying is that there's a lot more data that we don't know about
Yeah.
that the city has compiled, because originally, back in the good old days and around 2000, this was all going to be funded by developer money. They were going to put it up to make, and then the crash hit. So I'm just saying there's a lot more data out there than you might think. This area, PMU 50, it goes from the top to the bottom. It's 53, 52, 51, have been looked at extensively over the years.
Well, the pink area is in all 5. You know, the pink area analysis, that's in all 5. That doesn't change. What changes is the route between the pink area, and the pink area is what I think we're talking about, where there are thousands of properties by thousands of property owners. What happens to the south of that is, I imagine from what I heard, is developers own that property and they want to develop it. And so they're giving away free right-of-way to open their properties up to a good road so they can develop it. Right.
And that's why they originally thought to go ahead, because the Parkway was needed. It's always been needed. We've always wanted it. And the developers want it exactly for your reasons. You're absolutely correct. And at the time, everything looked rosy. And then 2004, 2005 hit. And all of the developer projects collapsed.
Well, now they want to revitalize it. No, so the pink's a given. That's going to be on us. I mean, that's been there for a long time. 1 million property owners in there. We got to bear the cost, but we're looking at properties to the south of that. And that's really what this is all about. What's the best route south of that? And my whole conversation and suggestions and questions have been specifically in regard to the property south of it, where people are volunteering free land. When there's free land, there's always a catch.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, once again, thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, moving on to our DOT report. I think, do we have Ms. Hinson on the phone?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Julia Holtzhausen on behalf of DOT. Can everyone hear me okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Chair and Board, for having me today. Just wanted to give you all the FDOT report. The construction report is attached to your agenda. Please let me know if you have any questions regarding any of the project updates, and I will gladly follow up. At this time, we don't have any confirmed public meetings for April and May in the Space Coast Planning region. However, if that should change, we will provide that information as soon as it is available. At this time, I'd like to introduce Stephen Elianello with District 5. He is a District 5 consultant and program manager for the Department's Commuter Assistance Program to give a brief program update.
Thank you, Julia, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we do.
Great, fantastic. So again, my name is Stephen Alinello, and I manage the District 5 Rethink Your Commute program. And if we can go to the next slide, at Rethink Your Commute, we work with employers to create worksite programming that reduces congestion, improves air qualities, and saves commuters money. Those employers who offer significant commuter benefits as part of their overall employee benefits are eligible to become designated as a best workplace for commuters, which is a national designation with over 450 employers across the country. The 2021 list was released at the end of January, and the reason that I'm here today is to report to this board that not only does District 5 in Central Florida as a region continue to lead the state of Florida in employers that have received this distinction, but we also have 3 employers from right here in Brevard County to highlight for you as part of the 2021 list. And if we go to the last slide, first I'll highlight Space Coast Area Transit. Space Coast Area Transit SCAT continues to inherently earn a place on this list as employees are eligible to ride the SCAT buses for free. In addition to this, though, the program does work hand in hand with ours throughout the year to provide programming and events that connect employees with information regarding other options like rideshare that might work better for their commutes, depending on where they're coming from. Also want to recognize CareerSource Brevard. We've been working with Career Source back when they were Brevard Workforce, when Space Coast Area Transit Route number 7 expanded their service to the Rockledge office. They also offer that transit benefit to their employees, which places them on the 2021 list as well. And then last but not least, and this is an interesting one, the Orlando VA Medical Center. The Brevard worksite that made the list is the Vera Outpatient Clinic. The VA offers a robust commuter benefits package, which includes a full employer subsidy for transit commuter van pools, as well as a $20 a month reimbursement program for employees who bicycle to work. In addition to providing these benefits, the VA also closely works with our program and Commute with Enterprise, the provider of the van pools to Space Coast Area Transit and other agencies, to make sure their employees know about this benefit, to put them in a position to use it. Every 2 weeks, we're at the work site enrolling employees into a ride matching program so they can see if there are groups leaving near them, and the results have been staggering. The VA has over 80 van pools on the road, and that's right now. Even during the pandemic, these are mostly essential workers. They're still sharing the ride to work safely, and what we see there is that each van pool that's on the road removes 4 to 14 personal vehicles off of the road, and their employees are able to save money and the wear and tear of their own vehicles by leaving them in their neighborhood or at a park and ride lot. So it's truly a win-win. We look forward to continuing to work to grow the program through the both in terms of employer programming throughout work sites in Brevard, as well as those work sites who do earn that national distinction as the best workplace for commuters. And while we're looking forward to this maybe meriting a in-person recognition event in the future, I do appreciate your time today to be able to recognize these 3 employers through this report. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alianello. Ms. Holzhausen, do you have anything else?
That is it for today. If anybody has any questions, I can take it back to the team and follow up.
Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the public engagement report. Abby.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Abby Hemingway, and I'm the Public Involvement Officer for the Space Coast TPO. And today I will be talking about some of our upcoming public involvement and engagement activities for the months of March and April. But first, before I dive into that, I did want to first recognize that we did just have the second public meeting for our Minton Road feasibility study that Travis already spoke about today. And I wanted to acknowledge the reach and really the public engagement that we had on that specific roadway public meeting. And this is attributed to the help of Kittleson Associates and Sarah Crom, the project manager. We really worked on a unique public involvement plan for this project. So this roadway virtual public meeting had the highest attendance to date. We had 90 attendees on the call at one point. And we also were able to have over 1,500 people visit the project website. And then we also reached over 52,000 people on social media, meaning at some point somebody saw the event or they saw to visit the project website, showed up in their newsfeed, or they shared it. So this project was very successful when it came to ensuring that the public was engaged and that they actually attended the event. Normally these are face-to-face public meetings, and we've kind of turned our plan and are being more strategic in trying to host virtual options so that people will have multiple ways to participate. So I just wanted to give a shout out there. And then moving on, as most of you know, March is Women's History Month. On our social media platforms, we are highlighting women who paved the way in transportation. There are many successful innovators and contributors to the transportation realm. We'll also be highlighting some of our staff members, and if you haven't noticed, we're mostly female. And then also, as Georgiana touched on in her report, it is Florida Bicycle Month. This is a proclaimed month by the governor. And so we are taking the time to not only set up outreach events, but we are also highlighting some things on our social media and our website as well. So some topics that we'll be talking about that kind of circulate Florida Bicycle Month, we'll be talking about our local trails, pushing out some of our videos, talking about bicycle laws, specific road markings, helmet fit, And then next week is spring break for Brevard County. So we'll be working and partnering with Brevard Public Schools in pushing out information about youth bike safety. So we'll be pushing out things like guidelines for parents, activities, games that we have on our website that they can use to entertain their kids during spring break. And then we have some actual events coming up near the end of the month. On the 20th, we are partnering with the MIMS United Methodist Church, and we are going to help them pop up and do some safety education on the rail trail up there in the north end of Brevard County. And they typically hand out breakfast items to riders. They see hundreds of cyclists on the rail trail. And we've been wanting to do this now for a while. So we will be there. We'll have staff there talking about bike safety and have some resources and some goodies for cyclists. And then on the 23rd, we will be partnering with Rethink Your Commute, who you just heard from, to host a virtual webinar. It's going to be a lunch and learn, and it is called Cycle Savvy Light. This is a beginner type of webinar to learn about bicycle safety, guidelines, laws, and we'll be hearing from some experts. And you can find all of this information. We'll be putting it in our newsletter next week and also on our social media and on our website. And then lastly, we'll be closing out the month partnering with FDOT District 5. We will be taking it to the streets and going down to the US 192 corridor right near the Melbourne Square Mall. We'll be talking to bicyclists and motorists about safety education. So we're really excited about these events, and it's nice for us to be able to get back out there. We've missed talking to people. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight some other campaigns that you will probably see trending not only on our social media, but on other national safety and transportation sites. So of course, we know St. Patrick's Day is coming up here soon. We always take that a few days before to highlight that buzz driving is drunk driving. We see a lot of crashes normally around that time. And then there's quite a large campaign that will be going on about rail grade crossing safety. Right now, you know, it's always a huge concern, but eventually we're going to have Brightline that passes through this county. So we really want to get ahead of the curve and be out there talking about making sure that you need to stop for trains and then you need to not be on the tracks. And then lastly, April is National Distracted Driving Awareness Month. We'll be partnering with our local public information officers and our law enforcement agencies to really get out the word to put it down when you're driving. And that is all I have.
Hey, are there any questions or comments for Abby? Pete?
Yeah.
Adam, 1 second. Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, Abby, on the trail pop-up, well, are you going to set up like a little tent?
I think we're going to have a table. I'm not really sure if we're going to have a tent, but it's
You don't want shade?
Well, it'll be, they're out there pretty early. We're going to be out there from about 7 to 11 in the morning. So as far as I know, I believe we're going to have a table and we'll have some resources, and we're partnering with Rethink. They're going to send us some goodies for the cyclists that are along that trail.
Okay, have fun.
Adam.
Yeah, real quick. Abby, we talked about counting on some of these trails, like we count cars on the roadway. Has there been any plans to do something like that on this particular day that you're planning next week or sometime in the near future?
Sarah? No, Sarah's not here. Go ahead, Lauren.
We have started looking at that specifically. I don't believe we have any plans to count on this day, but we do have, I'd have to actually ask Chelsea. We did request a volume count on the rail trail this past year. So that should have been done, and we will be looking to count more as we have more funds available.
Yeah, and I should just add that our little pop-up event up in MIMS, this specific church, the MIMS United Methodist, this is something that they've been doing. They actually consider it a ministry, and they service these cyclists. They have been doing it at least for the past year that we know of on Saturdays. So we were aware of it last year, wanted to partner, and then COVID happened. So we just thought that this was a good opportunity now to partner with them. So this is something that has been ongoing. It wasn't a special event. Just wanted to point that out.
One other thing, Abby.
Yeah.
You talked about the Minton study, not the study, but the
public meeting.
word. Yeah. You said it was the best so far.
It was the highest attended so far,
okay, so
and it saw a lot of public engagement. Yes.
So how does that compare with number 2?
Well, this was the second meeting. So versus the first meeting, is that what
No.
you said?
How does this compare with other presentations to the public in the past that weren't as well attended as this one?
So I would say, just to give you a glimpse of what this looked like. So if we compared it to Aurora Road, which was in person, we only had 50 people show up in person, and the feedback, you'd be lucky if you got a feedback form turned back in, versus people can visit this project website and fill out the form. And I don't remember how many forms we got turned back in on the second go around, but much higher than what we were doing in person. And I don't want to speak too much, but I mean, it's been the same for the first Minton Road public meeting, our first open house last year, we saw more engagement. So you can definitely tell that people are comfortable with attending virtually and submitting information virtually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Abby?
Yeah, I have a bounce back on Adam and the trail counters. In where you're going to do the amenities study for the trails, in the steering committee, they envision setting up with the business people. That means the chamber. And, if the chamber is interested in data like that, they can coordinate with the engineers that are going to be doing the study on the trails and see if they can get a counter set up, because it should help the businesses in North Brevard County to know the traffic they're getting. And the problem is always money. So who wants the information? Why do they want the information? Are they willing to dig in their pockets? I think the chamber would be willing to dig in their pockets. There's an avenue to do it with. Just get with them, see if you can get on the steering committee and have at it, man.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Okay, thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Moving on, that brings us to our transit report, Terry Jordan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Terry Jordan, Space Coast Area Transit Planner. This afternoon, I'm going to just give 3 quick updates on what's happening with transit. Thank you. So the first item is the ADA bus stop training. Sarah and myself, along with other TPO staff, have worked over the last 2 years since the bus stop analysis was done late 2019 to work with local municipalities, cities, and other agencies to ensure that the bus stops are, as much as possible, brought up to ADA compliance. So what this training is going to do is when different agencies or different municipalities or road work is being done, it's going to provide training that enables those that are reviewing the plans to see exactly what the requirements are for making a stop completely compliant. We have several stops out currently that, from the layman's perspective, may look compliant, but there are components that make them not compliant as a result. So we're completing this training to ensure that anyone that's installing, implementing, or even upgrading pads will have a completely compliant location. So we're working in conjunction with the TPO and sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
Local municipalities?
Yes, everyone is, sorry.
That's okay.
So we're going to make sure that everything that needs to be done is done and done correctly at these locations. So the second item. You can give it a, so while Steven's pulling it up for me, so in the age of COVID, everyone has been doing as much as possible to avoid contact and avoid touching surfaces. So at Space Coast Area Transit, what we've also done is implement a new opportunity for our customers to go contactless as much as they would like to as well. And what you're about to see is our entry into this, which is going to be the ability for customers to purchase the pass remotely with a credit card, debit card, or any type of other payment. And then once they board the transit vehicle, they were able to show their phone which displays an actual payment versus using currency or tickets or things of that nature, or standing at the fare box to get the money put in the fare box. You know, wet dollar bills don't slide, that type of thing. And they stand there even longer. So it minimizes the contact. So all a passenger really has to do is when they board the vehicle, they're going to show their phone, and it will be a pass very similar to what you're seeing on the screen on that cell phone there. It's going to have a pulsating ring around the Space Coast Area Transit logo, and the time will display the current and accurate time. The colors change as well, so we can identify information. So what we do is we have about a 3-step process to avoid things like people grabbing a screenshot or even a video. So you would pretty much have to be doing the same thing at the same time every day, but then we change the color. So we minimize the opportunity for fraud as much as possible. So a passenger gets on the bus, they show this to the operator sees the pulsating ring, they see the current time, and they know that passenger has a valid fare payment. They press the button, the passenger continues on, hot second, and the person's in the seat. Versus, like I mentioned, standing at the fare box currently trying to put their money in, put the coins in, and everything else that we have to utilize as a source of payment. So once again, it minimizes the contact that the individual has with the operator. It minimizes the amount of time that the person is utilizing things like I said, any other payment methods such as cash or coins or tickets. So, but thirdly, also it minimizes on our end the need for individuals to then handle that cash or count that cash in those tickets. So we're doing our best to also encourage this to minimize the potential transmission of COVID via touch or in-person contact. The last item, which you have heard me talk about a couple of times here, is one of the more exciting things that we're delving into right now. So you've heard Stephen talk about ITS, and I've talked about ITS differently. Ours is Intelligent Transportation Systems, and what it does is allows for the use of technology on board our vehicles. So right now, this is a live map of our vehicles as they're traveling along the roadway. Right now, you're looking at fixed route service, which is the buses on the routes, and you're looking at a couple of demand response buses. So what I'll do is I'll show you what we look at, or what we can see from the perspective of individuals inside the office. So I'll just click on this bus right here, 3562, and I can see the speed the vehicle is traveling. I can see the operator driving that bus. I can also see by mousing over exactly how many passengers on board that vehicle right now. So it allows for me to see loads, and if it, that's correct, right now on that vehicle. And if it increases, this box would be then become 2 boxes or 3 boxes, and it changes color based on the capacity of the vehicle. So if I have a vehicle that has a 36 passenger capacity, I would have 3 boxes showing full at 36. But if I have a vehicle that has 40, it won't be, of course, full at 36. But also you see the speed this vehicle is traveling right now. Of course, as it goes over the causeway or that area, they have a little bit more leeway to travel a little faster. I'll take it off before it goes back to 60 or something like that. But it allows us to see all the information that we need to see on the vehicle. And also this green means the bus is actually traveling according to a scheduled time. So it's traveling unscheduled is what I'm seeing now. If it were red or orange, I would know it's running late. If it was blue, it would be running early. So we're seeing this bus travel on its scheduled service time. And I can see that for any route, real time. I'll show you the information on that right now. So we are currently still in the shakedown. This is going to be launched on April 3rd when it will be completely open to the public. There are little hiccups that we're trying to make sure are worked out. In addition to what I just mentioned, we also have the destination signs that show the vehicles where they're going, but also on the interior of the vehicle, the passenger can see the next upcoming stop. There's a ticker scroller that where the stop requested sign currently is. It shows the next stop for every stop on the route, but there are also announcements for major locations. So if the bus were passing by a hospital, it will say, actually announce the next stop is the hospital in advance of reaching that stop. So the passenger will be aware of that. So this is the internal side that we see inside, but what I'm about to show you, this is the passenger. This is what they'll have available to them via app or cell phone or desktop, whatever they're utilizing. So this is exactly what the passengers see. These are all the routes located here. I just highlighted 2 routes really quickly, which actually this is the bus we were seeing a moment ago. So what I am able to then do as a passenger is see, according to where I'm located, how soon the bus is scheduled to, well, not scheduled, how soon the bus will arrive at my location. So it shows the next 5 stops in sequence, and then every stop shows where the bus is coming. So you might have just saw it just changed. So you probably just saw all green a second ago, it just changed to blue. So what happened was one of the stops will have dropped off and another stop was added. So you see Milford Point is 8 minutes away. So the bus, this bus here will be at Milford Point in the next 8 minutes, and that's actual time unless it gets stopped by another light or something like that. So the passengers can see that information at any time there's a bus on the route when the next expected bus is going to reach their location. It is, thank you. Got that. So actually, the sequence for the GPS is actually loaded every 10 seconds, exactly that. So another component is if a passenger at a particular bus stop, let me see if I can zoom a little bit here. Too close, hang on guys. It's a little harder to use it without a mouse, so. So the passenger gets on a site, clicks on a bus. These boxes represent bus stops, by the way. Then it shows the bus stop location, and according to the GPS of the most closest buses, when the next scheduled, when the next bus will arrive at that location. So there's 2 steps pretty much. You can click on the bus to see the next 5 locations, or if you're in a stop, maybe a little further along the route, you can click on that stop and then see when the next vehicle will arrive at your particular location. And for example, this second one is the bus that's actually traveling eastbound right now. And when it returns coming westbound, that's the next time it will reach that stop. But the first bus is scheduled and will arrive there in the next 2 minutes. And then when it gets closer, everything says less than 2 minutes. So it's not exactly, it will be here in 1 minute. Everything says less than 2 minutes at that point to make sure the customer has the ability to get out in time.
Terry, you just confused me. Is it the 27 minutes to be going in the same direction, or that's this?
So if we're standing at the Cape Canaveral Hospital right now, traveling back toward Cocoa, the first bus will arrive there in less than 2 minutes. The next one after that will be the one that's scheduled, that will arrive there in 27 minutes. And what is represented is the first bus coming back this way, but the other bus has to then go down to Shepherd Park and then return back. And that's what that's represented. And the frequency on this route right now is about every 20 minutes. So you see we're just a little bit more than we should be, but it's actual real-time information that you can track anytime via your cell phone, via the app.
Bill, you had a question?
Yeah, what does the driver actually see?
So the driver has what we call an MDT in the vehicle. However, he or she is not looking at it. The only time that they will see anything currently is when they are logging in for the day and when they're logging out. In the next phase, what I intend on doing is having the operator get like a red alert or something like that. So if they're traveling ahead of schedule, it will tell them wait, hold, or something to that effect. So they will not travel ahead of schedule. They'll know that they need to stop and pull over and wait. So the schedule remains and the headway remains consistent as it should be, versus right now, an operator can go down the road and turn around, come right back. And the only thing we can do to catch them is look at this, or we might have been out on the street and it still happen, or a customer call in and say, the bus passed by, I was waiting at the time it's supposed to be there, and the bus passed by early. This allows us to actually even see that. We can go back and replay what happened yesterday, last week, last month, however long ago we need to see if it's a valid concern and then how we need to address it. So in addition to that, the operator would also see if they're driving one of the demand response routes, which is the ones that come to your house and pick you up. They will see the next 5 passenger, I'm sorry, excuse me, we're going to make it 3 passenger pickups points and drop off points on that same MDT or tablet, whichever one is being utilized in that vehicle. So pretty much right now for the fixed route, they don't get to see anything. They're not using it because we don't want them looking at this device as they're driving down the street. We can also send out canned messages, but it stays dark until the vehicle is completely stopped. And then once the vehicle is stopped, it will illuminate and the operator know to look at that message, but it will not display anything while the bus is in motion.
And one last question, Terry. The second part of this, of course, is each stop, how many are getting on and getting off?
That is correct. So that correlates with the passenger counts on the vehicles. So I can also track locations. So example, when we want to implement new shelters, we can look at locations that have a high usage versus a low usage. So we can see and track ridership at each individual location. That's going to be already available to us. It's just one of the things that we have to move toward once we get this phase completed.
And I just had a chance to review the TPO report that was done, I guess last year or so, on the ADA compliance. And that priority list is based strictly on your portion of the stops, or is it the overall? In other words, if a city or county is responsible for bringing sidewalks to that stop. Do you understand the question?
So I understand the question. The only thing I'm not, and Sarah could definitely help me out here, but or maybe Laura can as well, but I don't remember a priority list. So the assessment shows all the stops throughout the county, and then it was broken down by cities and local municipalities jurisdictions. Sarah and I would then work with those areas independently to determine which locations they want to bring up to compliance. They're different. Each one was completely different in how they would like to do it. Some were because of a project coming through that can fund it primarily. Some were going to make a priority based on locations where there was high pedestrian usage. Some were based that information on Space Coast Area Transit's assessment of high use for passenger ridership. So there really was no actual priority list. But to answer your question, each individual area will determine best how they can do it and depending on funding and whatever sources of upgrades were going to be done. So for example, Clear Lake Road, COCO would not do anything right away because of a potential project down the road, but other areas like Fisk Boulevard would see that immediately because that project is being completed right now.
Yeah, I did talk with Abigail Morgan on that. She did forward me the section that dealt with the routes and stops within COCO, and the far right column, they were definitely prioritized. And so I assume that was basically based on only the ADA requirement, not on user counts, because you couldn't do that as of then. And then it also included costs. And I think for the city of COCO, it was in the neighborhood of $374,000 from the consultant to bring those in line with ADA compliance. And I'm trying to get a feel for, I think that was only for the stop itself. If the city of COCO had to go and do sidewalk improvements and all of that to match that, which I assume that's what the training is for, that we're going to be doing, then that would be above and beyond. And then they can look at maybe the traffic counts and the ADA compliance and the costs, and then say, well, we should go modify that priority list from strictly an ADA perspective to a more realistic.
So I'll start with the priority list. I'm not familiar with the actual priority list that you mentioned. However, I would say it more likely came from conversations the city of COCO had internally and determine which locations they would make priorities. Secondarily, the costs to upgrade the location did include sidewalks. However, it was the consultants, what's the best way to put it? They're maybe estimated costs. So those numbers aren't exactly accurate in a sense that it will cost exactly X amount of dollars to bring this location into compliance, but it does include everything to make the site completely compliant, which is typically accessibility overall, whether it be a sidewalk connection, whether it be a pad, whether it be any other amenities needed. But it really is a matter of the accessibility completely. But going back a step, the total cost can be greatly reduced if there's a project that comes through. I'm going to go back to Fisk Boulevard. DOT is funding that project, so they're going to have approximately 15 or so locations brought up to compliance immediately at no expense. So those numbers will be determined based on the location and the assessment that's done at a location, and they can determine costs on the individual locations and then say, okay, each of these locations are X dollars and the total will be whatever the number is. So that number I would say is probably going to be significantly high.
Awesome. Thank you very much and love your displays.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The testing must be going well.
Last week we had a little bit of hiccups, but it was more of the destination signs that show outside the buses, but the functionality is going really well. We're just making sure that the call outs are going to happen where they're supposed to. It's not announcing a hospital after it's past it type thing. So
Is that also an ADA requirement?
it is. Yes, a verbal and audio and visual. Yes.
Tom, you had a question?
Yeah, just real quickly. If I understand you correctly, just using the Denny's on Merritt Island, stop in front of Denny's.
Yes, sir.
You can count the number of people getting on and off.
I will be able to. Yes. Well, we can do it now. We just haven't got to that point in the testing phase, but the functionality is there. I just haven't started running reports like that yet. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Adam.
This is my bailiwick. This is the kind of stuff that I work with when I was in the military. And I just want to commend you for bringing it to our attention, because this is an eye opener for me and hopefully for some of the folks in here. But the other thing is that we only could get a snapshot. We put an extra person on the bus to do a head count once a month. So to see if we were providing the service that we needed to the people on the base. My hat's off to you.
Thank you.
And you've already answered the other question. Your system is capable of producing reports because you're going to have an information overload. And you cannot be taking time every day to look at every single bus and every single thing. So, you know, your reports are going to be a godsend. I'm looking forward. You should be looking forward to the end result, hopefully before you retire.
Very, very soon, as a matter of fact. You know, one of the biggest things, as you mentioned, I'll go back to a comment made just earlier about knowing how many people were riding. When the ADA assessment was done, it was a snapshot. It was one day of the week a counter was on the vehicle. It could have been a good day, it could have been a bad day. Now this is constantly counting. I can tell how many people are riding per hour, how many people are riding per trip, how many people are riding per day, per route, whatever information I need is going to be available. But like you said, it's going to be information overload, and then the requests are going to be substantial. So we probably might need a second person just for the request alone. So. But thank you once again. All right, guys.
Anything else, Terry?
No, not for me. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Terry? Okay. Thank you, Terry. That brings us to our local government report. Anyone have anything they'd like to add? Greg.
Bright lines get ready to punch their box tunnel through underneath 528. The beach line. 528 will be closed completely for 2 different days in the middle of the night while they do that, and there'll be some rerouting when they drop that to single lane traffic for on and off routes. Both Brightline, City of Cocoa have put out the notices. So if you know of anybody that's coming up here with the next, they'll be starting that punch here in the next week or so. So that's kind of unique. This is the 5th time in the country that they're doing a box check. That technology, it's a Calvin company that does this. Brightline did this first over by Golden Rock Road in Orlando, and that was the first time we used this. We have to hydraulically push these sections right underneath a road.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Anyone have anything else to add?
Mr. Chair, Just Brevard, during the technical advisory committee, Brevard County did give just a couple little updates on projects. And of course, thank you for that. That is a big deal for Brightline and a major lane closure here in Brevard County, but it is exciting to see that technology. They mentioned that the Pineda overpass should be done next month. So that construction project is coming to an end for the county. St. John's Heritage Parkway Phase 2, that's from US 192 all the way up to Ellis. That's the ITS component of that project is finishing up. That's the cameras, the counters that would connect to the system. And then the county's John Rhodes sidewalk, which the TPO participated in funding as well, from O'Galley to Aurora, is getting underway for construction, which is an important little piece of sidewalk for transit users and what have you. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Georgiana. Tom, you had something?
Yeah, just real quick question. Ambassador, one of the things we've been talking about for several years is the bridge, 401 bridge. And just curious, I'm relatively new, so I apologize if I missed something, but I don't see where it's ever listed or anything or shown up in any of the documentation that I've seen so far.
Yes, sir.
Where does that stand?
It is a priority project. So if you look on the TPO's priority list, the State Road 401 bridge replacement is a priority. The PD&E has been funded. That's the big environmental phase. And they have selected a consultant. Am I right, Stephen? So the Florida DOT is managing that project. It is a SIS facility, Strategic Intermodal System facility. And so that PD&E will be underway, and at some point here that will be coming before you, and there will be a formal presentation. But that is a very, very important project.
Arlen, you had something?
Yes. Has there been a decision to put a station for Bright House anywhere near 528? Has anything been completed on that yet? No.
Well, I will say that a station has been identified there along US 1, behind the Walmart there at Clear Lake.
Right.
That is probably the best proposed station. The Brightline was very happy about that. They already own the land, which is important. But what needs to happen next is there needs to be a ridership study, because they need to be able to make money on the project to be able to build a station. And of course, with what happened with COVID, that certainly delayed some things as well. In fact, they just completely canceled their service in South Florida for a while. But we are very hopeful. We've had conversations. Laura and I have sat down with their representatives, and they still are hopeful that will happen in the future, but there's been no formal commitment for it.
Yeah, I understand with COVID and so forth. I mean, we don't have any ships, passenger ships coming in and out of the port or whatever. But once that does start up sometime a year down the future or whatever that is, I would think that a lot of them would be able to be traveling from Orlando International Airport down to there, save
Absolutely.
bus traffic up and down 528.
Absolutely. And I think they have made it very clear that their priority is to get service up and running to Orlando.
Right.
They got to get that going. They got to start making money. And at some point in the future, we need that ridership study. And I truly believe we will be getting a station here in Brevard County. It's so important.
Yeah, that was interesting. I'm retired from Orlando International, and our employee lot was running out of space back in '91. And at that particular time, I went to the board to see if we couldn't, expand the parking lot. And it says, "Oh no, there's a train coming through there." My God, that train's it's only 30 years later, but that train is coming right where they told me it was going.
Well, there you go.
Thank you.
All right, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom.
We had an update at the chamber. People from Brightline in last Wednesday, I believe it was. Anyway, they basically told us that you say it's all going to happen, but they're telling us it's probably not going to be for 5 years. What they said.
Yeah. Definitely, probably 5 years down the road. But as long as it happens.
Okay, anything else? Anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Seeing none, our next meeting will be held May 10th, same place, same time. Thank you for attending, and meeting is adjourned.
Hey, Adam, got some stuff to show you on the